Hey guys, it's Jet888. Today it is May 30th, and I just was looking around. I wanted to share this. I was interested in what the White House address was. So this is at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest, Washington, D.C., 2500. That's the phone number, 202-456-1111. The owner is the National Park Service. I didn't know that. So this is the map. There's 11th Street, Drunk Shakespeare, that's interesting, 17th Street. There's your park off of Constitution Avenue, next to Foggy Bottom, off of 66, Highway 66, or Interstate 66, near the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. There's Potomac River and the U.S. Marine Corps War Memorial. The reason why I'm showing you this is because I was curious about this, the business of White House Office Inc. If you look at White House Office, that's also WHO, which is sort of interesting, which people refer to as the WHO, or whatever. So White House Office Inc., and I looked at the address. This shows up on Dun and Bradstreet, the White House Office company profile, and it says the White House office is located at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest Washington, D.C., the same address I just showed. So here on Dun and Bradstreet and the White House office, there's the key principal is Joseph R. Biden Jr., whichever one that was, 4th, 5th, whoever, whichever clone that was, same address. They don't give the phone number, but here's the whitehouse.gov. Let's go see. That looks like him, his wife, but who knows which one that is and how long ago that picture was. And of course there's roses there. Roses were in a photo were used for the POWs in Vietnam, that if some family member sent them a picture with roses, it meant that there's a code inside behind the picture. So open it up and you'll see another code. So I wonder if that's just a coincidence or what that really is. So it's a .inc. So I guess the White House is a business. I didn't know that. For some reason I just thought government was different than just a business. I don't know. Maybe I'm just super ignorant about that. So I looked up what Inc. is, what is it, INC. A corporation is a legal entity that is separate from its owners, which can protect you from any business liabilities and help get your business off the ground. So the Inc., as most of us know, is an abbreviation for incorporated when it's used for a company's names. So I just asked, who owns the land where Washington, D.C. is? And this isn't what I'm really starting off. Sorry, I got distracted, but there's a national emergency right now, and I wanted to share that. But this says the public reservations of the District of Columbia, that's D.C., are a collection of 974 properties originally owned by the federal government, which have since been either transferred to a D.C. government entity. And when you look at dc.gov, public lands, who owns the land where Washington, D.C. is? Congress passed the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1801. Nothing's organic lately, which officially organized the district and placed the entire territory under the exclusive control of the federal government. So under our government, under the whitehouse.gov, it's our government. The federal government is composed of 3 distinct branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. And I'm going to give you a link today also on the, there was a hearing on Supreme Court, but anyhow, that's interesting, and their ethics, but whose powers are vested by the U.S. Constitution. So on this page, ourgovernment.gov, about the White House / our government, and it does show the White House. So it tells us who or what the federal government is composed of, the 3 distinct branches, which I mentioned, but it doesn't say who owns it. You would think the people own it, right? But the people aren't part of the business, the Inc., are they? So under state and local government, it says, under the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, all powers not granted to the federal government are reserved for the states and the people. All state governments are modeled after the federal government. They're modeled after the federal government and consist of three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. The U.S. Constitution mandates that all states uphold a republic form of government, not democracy, a republic form of government, although the three-branch structure is not required. That's weird because down here it kind of lists them as three branches are part of that. And when I ask who owns the federal government, all they get is this Federal Reserve Board and the feds. Who owns the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve System is not owned by anyone. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913 by the Federal Reserve Act to serve as the nation's what? To serve as the nation's, it says, the Federal Reserve Act to serve as the nation's central bank. Central bank. The Board of Governors in Washington, D.C. is an agency of the federal government and reports to and is directly accountable to the Congress. The Federal Reserve derives its authority from the Congress with the enactment of the Federal Reserve Act. So this central banking system has three important features: decentralized operating structure of 12 Federal Reserve banks, and number three, a blend of public and private characteristics. Now I'm doing a video right now on the PPP, public-private partnerships, which Operation Warp Speed mentioned. Okay, and now I want to show you what I was doing this video for. Oh, and one more thing, that this says the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, and it says the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, provides the nation with a safe, flexible, and stable monetary and financial system. Do you believe that? I just have to interrupt myself real quick here. So when they talk about the United States, the money, the monetary, stable monetary, are you kidding me? The US dollar is backed by debt. That is not stable, or, I mean, give me a break. I just had to say that. We're backed by debt. We're not backed by anything. And when they say flexible, able to be easily modified to respond to altered circumstances or conditions, that's what I think about. My God, okay. And the current Board of Governors, when they talk about Board of Governors, this is the DC Bar. They're a bunch of attorneys, lawyers. The DC Bar is governed by a Board of Governors composed of 20 lawyers selected by active membership and 3 members of, I think I read this, the public, appointed by the board itself as non-voting. So you can't vote. You're part of the public, but you can't vote. So that's an attorney. I mean, just look all these people up. It's disturbing. It's really disturbing. These are the people telling the world, I mean, our government, what's going to happen. Children's National Health System. Yep, you always have to have the children's fun things in there. Always got to get the kiddies in there. Yep. Attorneys. All legal systems. The bar. Yeah, kids in need. More kids. Yep. Fatima. There's a U.S. government. There's someone in the U.S. government. Who knew? Whoops. Stephen Miller, Federal Bar Association. Government Relations Committee. Yeah, so when you think you're hiring an attorney for justice, think again. Here's another U.S. government. Peggy Lansbach, Omar. Syria Justice and Accountability Center. There she is on LinkedIn. You already saw her picture. 201 followers. Imagine that. Event 201. Good job there, Peggy. Mediator, arbitrator, negotiator, facilitator. So, District of Columbia Bar, Hood College. So Human Resources, Labor, U.S. Department of Treasury. Look at this. Internship trainee. Look at that. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Huh. There's no conflict there, is there? I wonder if she knows Fauci. Look at that. She's been in there the years that he's been in there. Management and Leadership Training Program for select class of 100 women to become effective leaders in government. Why are you in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services if you're interested in government? 2-year program focused on special career development skills, mentorship, and challenges facing employees. Yeah, you think a big challenge facing the employees is that they've got to get the needle craft in order to work. Thanks, Peggy. Thanks for being part of that cog in the wheel. So she's really into human resources and stuff. Yep. She started out in health and human services. Here's another one. That's an attorney, federal law enforcement agency. Thanks, Chad. Diane Seltzer, Seltzer Law Firm. And Courtney. There you have it. There's your current Board of Governors. Here's one question also. It says, does the Federal Reserve maintain accounts for individuals? Because I've been reading or hearing about that in the Sarah Jazera. It says, can individuals use such accounts to pay bills and get money? And they say the answer is no. The Federal Reserve banks provide financial services to banks and governmental entities only. Individuals cannot, by law, have accounts at the Federal Reserve. This states a recent hoax circulating on the internet asserts that the Federal Reserve maintains accounts for individuals that are tied to the individual's Social Security number and that individuals can access these accounts to pay bills and obtain money. These claims are false. The Federal Reserve does not maintain accounts for individuals, and individuals should not attempt to make payments using Federal Reserve bank routing numbers or false routing numbers. But what's funny is when you look on the back of your Social Security or your birth certificate, it is owned by the bank. So that's interesting. Okay, now we're coming here to, I'm still in the whitehouse.gov briefing room, and it says executive order. This was April 27th, 2023. So, executive order on authority to order the ready reserve of the armed forces to active duty to address international drug trafficking. Okay, so it says, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the National Emergencies Act, that's 50 U.S.C. 1601 et sec. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Okay, so here's that 50 U.S.C. 1601. So termination of existing declared emergencies. So that's good. I'm going to leave this for you guys because there's, what is it, only 5 pages. And the et sec is all that follows. That's what that means. So if we're going with all that follows, it's also termination of any national emergency declared by the president in accordance with the subchapter. So these are, all the national emergencies are ended. So it talks about accountability and reporting requirements of president. It goes on forever, but I just don't really comprehend. It just seems like it's just a bunch of information to keep confusing people. Public law, I'm sure those attorneys on the board can figure this one out. There's your Congress. So part of this reads, each committee of the House Representatives and the Senate having jurisdiction with respect to any provision of law referred to in subsection A of this section shall make a complete study and investigation concerning that provisions of law and make a report. Well, I'm sure I'm not reading this right, but wouldn't that be great to have a big investigation and have a report of everything that happened in the last 3 years during all those emergency declarations? That would be nice. I'm probably not reading that right, but that would be nice. But this has the year September 14th, 1976. So something's going on. Something about 1976 I know is important. If anyone knows what this is really saying, let me know. And in furtherance of Executive Order 14059 of December 15, 2021, imposing sanctions on foreign persons involved in the global illicit drug trade. Wow, we did the war on drugs a long time ago, but which declared as national emergency to address the unusual and extraordinary threat, here we're being threatened again, to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States posed by international drug trafficking, it is hereby ordered as follows. And I guess maybe they're just getting too much competition for the drug trade. I don't know. So Biden just posed an emergency authority. So Section 1, emergency authority to provide additional authority to the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security to respond to the national emergency declared in Executive Order 14059, the authority under Section 12302 of Title 10 United States Code. Let's go look at that real quick. I'm going to open this right up. So here's 10 USC 12302, Ready Reserve. Text contains those laws in effect on May 29th, 2023. That was your Memorial Day. From Title 10, and 10 is AI. I'm doing a whole video on that right now. Armed Forces, Subtitle E, Reserve Components, Part 2, Personnel Generally, Chapter 1209, Active Duty. And this says 1203, Ready Reserve, in time of national emergency declared by the President after January 1st, 1953, or when otherwise authorized by law, an authority designated by the Secretary concerned may, without the consent of the persons concerned, order any unit and any member not assigned to a unit organized to serve as a unit in the Ready Reserve under the jurisdiction of that secretary to active duty for not more than 24 consecutive months. That's 2 years. B, it says to achieve fair treatment as between members in the Ready Reserve who are being considered for recall to duty without their consent. Without their consent. So basically that's a draft. Considered shall be given to, that says consideration shall be given to the length and nature of previous service to assure such sharing of exposure to hazards as the national security and military requirements will reasonably allow, family responsibilities, and 3, employment necessary to maintain the national health, safety, or interest. So that's interesting. So the Ready Reserve who are being considered for recall to duty without their consent, consideration shall be given. The length and nature of previous service to assure such sharing of exposure to hazards. So you get to share the exposures to hazards. That's why you're only allowed 2 years, I guess, to be poisoned or something, as the national security and military requirements will reasonably allow. They'll reasonably allow you to be exposed to hazards and sharing of those hazards. So here's all these statutes. I think they're called statutes. I'm not sure. Secretary of Defense shall prescribe such policies and procedures as he considers necessary to carry out this subsection. Not more than 1 million members of the Ready Reserve may be on active duty without their consent. That means you're being drafted under this section at any one time. And just curious here, it says in subsection A, the word after January 1st, 1953 are substituted for the words hereafter to reflect the effective date of the source statute. And it says, 2, the words without the consent of the persons concerned are substituted for the word involuntary. So involuntary, I think, means slavery too, doesn't it? are under force. So above, when I read it, says, because it's trying to clarify, it says in subsection C, the words on active duty, other than for training, are substituted for the words may be required to perform active duty. For clarity, it says the words without their consent are substituted for the word involuntary. So he's calling up the people in the ready reserve. This is just from what I gather. This is just from me reading the words and just what I'm gathering from it. Text contains those laws in effect on May 29th, 2023. So ready reserve 10 USC 12302. So what does this mean? Does anyone really, can you figure that out? It's a National Emergencies Act. So they're always trying to call a National Emergencies Act so they can do what thou wilt. That's Aleister Crowley, do what thou wilt. Dilemma, number 93. Okay, so that's interesting. So National Emergencies Act. The National Emergencies Act is a United States federal law passed to end all previous national emergencies and to formalize the emergency powers of the president. The act empowers the president to activate special powers during a crisis, but imposes certain procedural formalities when invoking such powers. The perceived need for the law arose from the scope and number of laws granting special powers to the executive in times of national emergencies. Congress can terminate an emergency declaration with a joint resolution enacted into law. Powers available under this act are limited to the 136 emergency powers Congress has defined by law. Looking under those 136 emergency powers, Congress has delegated at least 136 distinct statutory emergency powers to the president, each available upon the declaration of an emergency. Only 13 of these require a declaration from Congress. The remaining 123 are assumed by an executive declaration with no further congressional input. Congressionally authorized emergency presidential powers are sweeping and dramatic and range from suspending all laws regulating chemical and biological weapons, including the ban on human testing. That would be good, maybe. To suspending any Clean Air Act implementation plan or excess emissions penalty upon petition of a state government. So they can they can suspend any Clean Air Act or excess emissions penalty. So that means they can put out excess emissions without penalty. Using any existing defense appropriations for such military construction. So appropriations. I'll look at that appropriations lately, but then we go here to drafting. Drafting any retired Coast Guard officers or enlisted members. So you can now be drafted into an active duty regardless of ineligibility for selective service. So invocations as of March 2020, 60 national emergencies have been declared. Geez, with 31 of them being renewed annually. That means that they usually don't go away, or at least half of them don't. These include the 8 that were declared prior to the passage of the 1976 Act. The longest continuing national emergency dates back to November 1979 by the Carter administration blocking Iranian government property under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. So let's look at that appropriations, and I'm doing something right now about this appropriations thing too, and I'll have to put that out later, I guess. Okay, so the word appropriation, it's a noun, the action of taking something for one's own use, typically without the owner's permission. Isn't that interesting? A sum of money or total of assets devoted to a special purpose. So I'd be more concerned about this, the action of taking something for one's own use, typically without the owner's permission. And this is interesting too, appropriation technique in art. Appropriation in art is the use of pre-existing objects or images with little or no transformation applied to them. The use of appropriation has played a significant role in the history of the arts. That's interesting. So it's the use of pre-existing objects or images. You're an object, aren't you? Aren't humans? I mean, they're pre-existing with little or no transformation, but yet you can take it for your own use without the owner's permission. So again, the National Emergencies Act is an act to terminate certain authorities with respect to national emergencies still in effect and to provide for orderly implementation and termination of future national emergencies. Implementation. So basically, Section 1, Emergency Authority. He says it's hereby invested or ordered in me to provide additional authority to the Secretary of Defense. Do you know, well, I'll get into that later, and the Secretary of Homeland Security to respond to the national emergency declared in Executive Order 14059 and 14059 of December 15, 2021, imposing sanctions on foreign persons involved in the global illicit drug trade. So all these branches in arms and military are authorized to order to active duty such units and individual members of the ready reserve. So I think that people are basically being drafted. So the Secretary of Defense is Lloyd J. Austin III. Here he is getting sworn in. At least he's being sworn in, maybe. I don't know who's that. I don't know who that person is. And right now it says today's events. The Secretary is traveling. He's traveling. So I guess he's not doing business. He's just traveling. Secretary of Defense, 7 hours ago, he visited the Indo-Pacific region. So here it talks about his Defense Lloyd J. Austin's 7th trip to the Indo-Pacific comes at a time when the Department of Defense is doing more than ever with U.S. allies and partners to strengthen peace, stability, and deterrence. That means basically we're going to go to war, because everything they say, you just flip it around and turn it backwards. At the heart of a free and open regional vision. So in Japan, Secretary Austin will underscore historic progress in strengthening and modernizing the U.S.-Japan alliance. Modernizing. All right, I'll leave this link. And here it says strengthen U.S. regional force posture. Forward deploying a U.S. Marine littoral, what's that mean, regiment? The Marine Corps' most advanced formation to Japan by 2025, significantly enhancing combat credible deterrence. I thought we're supposed to be a one world order. Why would you fight amongst yourselves, I wonder? Well, you know, because they play both sides. And over here it says that the United States is doubling down in these efforts to boost their capabilities across an Indo-Pacific with their regional allies and partners by supporting Japan's decision to acquire new capabilities that strengthen regional deterrence, launching the U.S.-India initiative on critical emerging technology. That's probably not good, because new technology is never good for the people, at least not for your health. Coordinating closely with the Philippines on defense modernization. That probably also includes lots of satellites. Oh, great. And they're investing over $1.2 billion in security cooperation initiatives across the Indo-Pacific too. That's great. Throw more money at them, just like you did Ukraine. Billions. I think 114 billion, or is it 150 billion? I can't keep up now. So this is a video I've been working on, not this, but this image is part of a video I've been working on since like May 1st, May 5th. So anyhow, it talks about mergers and acquisitions, and notice the little maypole. This is the one that I started on when I talked about May Day and maypole. And it just all seemed to look alike. And that's also kind of dealing with the Tin Man, and that looks like a twister. But anyhow, the maypole, it kind of looks like the monopole. And I mention in here about monopole and monopoly. This is the monopole, and look how close the word monopole and monopoly are. But anyhow, talking about acquisitions when they can just take from you what they want. I'm going to try to keep going on that one. That was really, I'm having a hard time getting through it, but just because my computer keeps shutting down. Anyhow, just wondering what you all think about the emergency. So I should clarify more. So appropriation, it says public funds that are set aside for specific purposes, the use of borrowed elements in the creation of new work. Sociology, the simulation of concepts into a governing framework. That's appropriation. And allocation is the process or procedure for allocating things. I hate it when people use the same word in the sentence you're trying to find the definition for, but it says especially money or other resources. But the acquisition, an asset or object bought or obtained, and obtain is to get, acquire, or secure something. So basically take it by force if you want it. That's what this acquisition is. And that the mergers and acquisitions is kind of like the PPP, public-private partnerships, where they're all coming together, working together to take what you've got. But I think those visuals are kind of interesting. And there's the twister. All right. I found this to be an interesting visual of, there's the witch. It looks like it's supposed to be a twister from the land of Oz. And look at the house is stuck into the tornado. And that, the maypole and stuff, it has become a pagan holiday too. And it's about collecting the harvest, like acquiring, like acquisitions.